I thought marriage meant love, but I was wrong. He ignored me, lied to me, and slowly broke my heart. For months, I stayed silent, crying alone in a city of millions. But one day, I found the courage to leave, and my life changed forever. This is my story, the story of how I survived a toxic marriage. My name is Echelon. This is the story of the life I tried to save. And the marriage that slowly destroyed me in a big, shining city. When I first moved here after my wedding, I thought this city would change my life. I thought new roads, new lights, new people, and a new home meant a new beginning. But nothing felt new. Only I felt new. New to the pain I had never known before. Raiden, my husband, was not a monster on day one. He was soft-spoken, gentle, almost caring. But every month, something inside him changed. And every month, something inside me broke. The city outside was loud. But our home was silent. Too silent. Every morning I made breakfast, hoping he'd sit with me. But he always walked out while checking his phone, saying, "Don't wait for me. I'll be late." He never looked at me. He never smiled at me. He never asked if I slept well. I lived with him. But I lived alone. Sometimes I stood by our apartment window for hours. I used to watch people rushing to work, holding hands, laughing, fighting, living. And I used to wonder, why is my life the only one that feels stuck? Why does my heart feel tired at only 26? Why does marriage feel like punishment when it should feel like home? I tried everything to make our home warm. I decorated it. I cooked his favorite meals. I waited for him every night like a child waiting for her father to return. But he never noticed. His silence was louder than any fight. His distance was deeper than any argument. He wasn't cruel with words. No. He was cruel with absence. And absence is the slowest kind of heartbreak. One evening, I asked him gently, "Raiden, are we okay?" He didn't even look up from his laptop. "We're fine. You overthink too much." That was the first time I felt the sting of something I didn't yet understand. Gaslighting. But I didn't have that word back then. I only had feelings. Confusion. Fear. Loneliness. That night, I sat on the kitchen floor after he went to sleep. I cried without sound. Without breath. Without strength. I cried like someone who knew she was unheard. And in a city full of millions, I felt like the only one who had no one. This was the beginning of my toxic marriage. This was the beginning of my silence. The nights were the hardest. The days were silent. But the nights were empty. Raiden had started coming home late. So late that even the city lights outside our window looked tired. At first, I believed him. Work is hectic. That project needs extra hours. My boss is strict. I trusted every excuse. Because that's what wives do. When they think trust can fix distance. Every night, I cooked dinner for two. Every night, I ate alone. Sometimes I kept his plate warm for hours. Sometimes I fell asleep on the sofa, holding the TV remote like a child holding a toy. Something to keep me company. While I waited for a man who never came home on time. But one night, I smelled something different on him. A perfume. Soft, sweet, and floral. A scent that didn't belong to me. To our home. Or to any place he claimed he had been working. I held his shirt quietly. My fingers trembling over the fabric. My heart beat louder than the traffic outside. "Whose perfume is this?" I asked gently. He didn't even pause. He didn't even blink. "You're imagining things again, Echelon. Stop creating problems." That sentence. It felt like a slap without the sound. He changed his shirt. Went to sleep. And left me standing there. With the truth sitting on my skin. Like a wound I wasn't allowed to touch. From that night onward, I noticed every small detail. The late-night messages. The hidden phone screen. The sudden showers after coming home. The way he smiled at his phone. But never at me. One evening, at 2 a.m. he came home with the same perfume on him. Stronger this time. When he walked past me, my eyes filled with tears on their own. He paused for a moment, looked at me with irritation, and said, "You need a hobby. You have nothing in your life except watching me." And he walked away. That sentence broke something inside me. I wasn't watching him. I was losing him. While standing right in front of him. The city outside slept peacefully. But inside our home, I stayed awake. Staring at the clock. Waiting for a man who no longer felt like mine. I remember whispering to myself, if marriage feels this lonely, why did I ever want it? And for the first time, I felt scared. Scared of the truth I was beginning to see. I first heard her name before I ever saw her face. Melora said this. Melora suggested that. Melora handled the presentation. Every sentence of Raiden's day somehow included her, like she was a part of our marriage without ever stepping into our home. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was normal for coworkers to work closely, especially in a big city. But the way he said her name, it wasn't normal. It wasn't professional. It carried a softness I had not heard from him in months. The first time I saw her was at a company dinner. She walked in wearing a navy blue dress and a confidence that filled the room before her voice did. She was beautiful, sharp eyes, polished smile, elegant posture. But what hurt me more than her beauty was his expression when he saw her arrive. Raiden smiled. A full, bright, effortless smile, a smile I had not seen directed at me in so long that I had almost forgotten he was capable of showing that emotion. They stood close while talking. Too close. He leaned in every time she spoke. She touched his arm casually, and he didn't move away. When she laughed, he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. And I stood there like a shadow watching a light that didn't belong to me anymore. During dinner, I tried to join their conversation, but Raiden kept interrupting me. Echelon, you don't know about this. No, let me explain. You won't understand this kind of work talk. He spoke to me like I was an outsider, and to her like she was the person he admired the most. When we reached home that night, I gathered the courage to ask, do you like her? He looked at me with annoyance. Don't start. She's just a coworker. Stop being insecure. That word, insecure, hit me like a bullet. He used it so casually, like it was the only explanation for my pain. But deep inside, I knew he wasn't just defending her. He was protecting something. Something I wasn't a part of. Days turned into weeks, and Melora became a routine in our conversations. Every time his phone buzzed, it was her. Every time he dressed up more carefully, it was on days he worked with her. Every time he came home late, he blamed deadlines, but the perfume on his shirt whispered a different story. One afternoon, I went to his office to surprise him with lunch. I waited near the reception and saw him walking with Melora. They were laughing, free, open, comfortable. He held the door for her with a softness I had forgotten he had. She leaned into him to show something on her phone, and he didn't step away. He didn't even see me standing there. I left quietly before he could notice me, holding the lunch I had prepared with so much love, now feeling like a burden in my hands. That evening, when he came home, he barely acknowledged me. Didn't eat? I asked softly. No. I wasn't hungry. But I had seen him eating with her. Laughing with her. Living with her in ways he no longer lived with me. That night, as I lay in bed beside a man who felt like a stranger, one truth settled heavily in my heart. He smiled for her. He laughed for her. He stayed alive for her. But he stayed married to me. And that was the most painful place to exist. I don't know when I started changing myself for him. It happened slowly, quietly, the same way a flower bends towards sunlight without realizing it's losing its shape. I began waking up earlier, cooking better meals, dressing up more nicely, doing everything with extra care, hoping something, anything, would make him look at me the way he looked at Melora. But every effort I made felt like a whisper next to the loudness of his indifference. I bought new clothes. I tried new hairstyles. I learned the recipes he once mentioned he liked. I cleaned the house until my hands ached. I planned little surprises, tea waiting for him, a warm towel, soft music, a gentle touch. But nothing worked. He barely noticed I existed. My attempts to save our marriage felt like throwing stones into an ocean. Everything disappeared without a sound. One evening, I planned a special dinner. I cooked his childhood favorite dish, set the table with candles, and even wore a soft pastel dress he once said he liked. I waited for him with a hopeful heart, telling myself, this could be the night things get better. This could be the night he sees me again. But he walked in late, tired, irritated. He looked at the decorated table, then at me, and said, "Why do you overdo things? I'm not interested in this drama." After that, he took a plate, ate in silence, and went straight to the bedroom. No compliment. No thank you. No emotion. I stood there staring at the candles, watching their light shake the same way my heart was shaking. The worst moment came a week later when he agreed to go out for dinner with me. It was the first time in months he said yes. I dressed up with trembling excitement and spent the whole day preparing myself, hoping maybe we'd talk, maybe laugh, maybe reconnect. But at the restaurant, he barely looked at me. He kept checking his phone, typing fast, smiling at something I wasn't a part of. I knew, even without seeing the screen, who he was talking to. I don't know when I started changing myself for him. It happened slowly, quietly, the same way a flower bends towards sunlight without realizing it's losing its shape. I began waking up earlier, cooking better meals, dressing up more nicely, doing everything with extra care, hoping something, anything, would make him look at me the way he looked at Melora. But every effort I made felt like a whisper next to the loudness of his indifference. I bought new clothes. I tried new hairstyles. I learned the recipes he once mentioned he liked. I cleaned the house until my hands ached. I planned little surprises, tea waiting for him, a warm towel, soft music, a gentle touch. But nothing worked. He barely noticed I existed. My attempts to save our marriage felt like throwing stones into an ocean. Everything disappeared without a sound. One evening, I planned a special dinner. I cooked his childhood favorite dish, set the table with candles, and even wore a soft pastel dress he once said he liked. I waited for him with a hopeful heart, telling myself, this could be the night things get better. This could be the night he sees me again. But he walked in late, tired, irritated. He looked at the decorated table, then at me, and said, "Why do you overdo things? I'm not interested in this drama." After that, he took a plate, ate in silence, and went straight to the bedroom. No compliment. No thank you. No emotion. I stood there staring at the candles, watching their light shake the same way my heart was shaking. The worst moment came a week later when he agreed to go out for dinner with me. It was the first time in months he said yes. I dressed up with trembling excitement and spent the whole day preparing myself, hoping maybe we'd talk, maybe laugh, maybe reconnect. But at the restaurant, he barely looked at me. He kept checking his phone, typing fast, smiling at something I wasn't a part of. I knew, even without seeing the screen, who he was talking to. I tried starting a conversation. "How was your day?" He shrugged. "Normal. Can we, maybe talk about us? I feel like..." He cut me off, raising his voice just enough for the people at the next table to hear. "Echelon, you are overreacting again. Can't you just enjoy a simple dinner without creating issues?" My face burned with embarrassment. People stared. Someone whispered. And I sat there, trying not to cry, swallowing my humiliation like it was part of the menu. He never apologized, not that night, not the next day, not ever. Instead, he acted like nothing happened. But something did happen. Something changed inside me. I realized I had stopped living for myself. My entire existence had become a desperate attempt to hold someone who wasn't slipping away. He had already left emotionally, and I was the only one still standing in this marriage. I started feeling invisible. Empty. Lost. And the worst part was, I wasn't even fighting for happiness anymore. I was fighting for a man who didn't want me. That was the night I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were tired, her smile faint, her spirit broken. She didn't look like a wife. She didn't even look like herself. She looked like someone who loved too much. And lost herself in the process. The panic attack came without warning. One moment I was standing in the kitchen holding a glass of water, and the next moment my hand started shaking so badly that the glass slipped and shattered on the floor. My chest tightened as if someone had tied a rope around my ribs and was pulling it tighter with every breath. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't even call out for help. I sank to the floor, gripping my shirt near my heart, struggling to pull in air. My mind kept replaying the same images, Raiden laughing with Melora, Raiden ignoring me, Raiden walking past me like I was made of air. It felt like the pain I had swallowed for months was suddenly too heavy for my body to carry. I don't know how long I sat there, trembling and gasping. The room felt dark even though the lights were on. Time felt heavy. Everything inside me felt broken. When I finally managed to pull myself up, I opened the apartment door to get some air, and collapsed on the hallway floor. That's when Samir, our neighbor, found me. He bent down, shocked, and asked gently, "Are you okay? What happened? Can you breathe?" I couldn't speak, I could only nod weakly. He helped me sit up and brought me a glass of cold water from his apartment. He waited patiently until my breathing slowed, until the shaking stopped, until I could finally say, "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine, not even close. He didn't force questions, but his eyes showed concern. "Echelon, you should talk to someone. This isn't just stress. You're hurting. You need support." Support. It was such a simple word, yet it felt like something I hadn't received in a long, long time. When Raiden came home that night, he saw the broken glass, the wet floor, and the mop lying there. "What happened here?" he asked carelessly. "I had a panic attack," I whispered, hoping he would hear the fear in my voice, hoping he would finally see my pain. But he just shrugged. "You worry too much. Maybe stop overthinking." That was all. No hug. No concern. No moment of care. He didn't even ask if I was okay. I went to bed that night with a pillow pressed against my chest, trying to calm the ache that wouldn't go away. The city outside was still glowing with life, but inside me, everything felt dark and cold. The next morning, Samir knocked on my door and handed me a small card. A therapist's contact. A simple name written on it, Aaron. He said softly, "You don't deserve to suffer alone. Talk to someone who can help you. You matter." Those words stayed with me long after he left. You matter. I didn't remember the last time someone said that to me. And meant it. That evening, while Raiden was out again, God knows where, I sat alone with the therapist's card in my hands. My heart was still trembling from the inside, still feeling like it couldn't beat normally, still scared of what my life had become. For the first time in months, I realized something. I wasn't breaking because of love. I was breaking because I was living in a marriage where love didn't exist anymore. And maybe it was time to ask for help. I don't know what pushed me to do it. Maybe it was the panic attack. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the quiet pain that had been living in my chest for too long. But one evening, when Raiden said he had extra work again, something inside me whispered. Follow him. Just once. See the truth with your own eyes. My hands were shaking when I grabbed my shawl and stepped outside. I stayed far behind him, hidden in the crowds of the city, moving with the noise, the lights, the chaos, following a man who no longer felt like my husband. He walked confidently, checking his phone, smiling at his screen. I had seen that smile before, but never for me. After a while, he entered a quiet restaurant. Not a workplace. Not an office. A cozy, warm, soft-lit restaurant, the kind of place meant for connection, not for meetings. I stood across the street, my heart pounding painfully inside my chest. For a moment, I hoped he was alone. I hoped I was wrong. I hoped this nightmare would end here. But then, Melora walked in. She walked straight to him, smiling like she already knew he would be there. And Raiden stood up for her, something he never did for me anymore. He helped her take off her coat. She touched his arm lightly. He laughed. She blushed. They sat close, too close, sharing something private, something intimate, something I was not a part of. Their heads leaned toward each other as if they were sharing a world that only belonged to them. I watched through the glass window, my breath stuck in my throat. Every movement between them cut through me like a knife, slow, deep, silent. At one point, she placed her hand on top of his. And he didn't move it away. That was the moment I felt something inside me die. The truth wasn't just visible, it was undeniable. They weren't coworkers. They weren't just friends. They were something more. Something he never admitted. Something he never had the courage to tell me. Tears filled my eyes, blurring the lights of the restaurant. I stood there on the sidewalk like a forgotten person, watching the man I married act like he belonged to someone else. The cold wind hit my face, but I hardly felt it. My pain was louder than the traffic, stronger than the noise, heavier than my heartbeat. I didn't walk inside. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream or cry in front of anyone. I just turned around, and walked away. I walked for so long that I didn't know where the road ended or where I was going. The city looked different, colder, darker, crueler, like it was reflecting my heart back at me. When I finally reached home, I sat on the floor, hugging my knees. My whole body felt empty, but my mind was painfully awake. All the nights he came late, all the excuses, all the perfume scents, all the lies, everything made sense now. He wasn't losing interest. He wasn't stressed. He wasn't busy. He was already gone. I remember whispering to myself in the dark. I wasn't imagining anything. He made me believe I was. And that realization hurt more than betrayal itself. Because betrayal destroys trust. But gaslighting destroys a person. I remember that week like a heavy shadow sitting on my chest. Every day felt the same, silent mornings, tense evenings, and long nights where I cried quietly so Rael wouldn't hear me. I had stopped fighting. I had stopped asking for love. I was just trying to survive inside a home that never felt safe. My body was tired, but my heart was even more tired. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat properly, and I couldn't think clearly. Even small sounds started scaring me. When Rael walked into a room, my hands would shake. When he called my name, my breath would stop for a second. I didn't recognize myself anymore. One evening, I felt my chest tighten. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my trembling hands, trying to breathe. The room around me felt small, suffocating. Rael was in the living room, shouting at someone on the phone. His voice kept echoing in my head. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Please, stop, just stop." But he didn't. He never did. That night, I broke down. Not loudly. Not dramatically. I just sat on the floor with my back against the wall, my knees pulled close, and tears sliding slowly down my face. I didn't even cry like a person anymore. It was quiet, numb, empty. I felt like a ghost in my own life. I looked around at the cold walls, the dim lights, the silence between us, and something inside me whispered a truth I had refused to hear. This is not love. You are destroying yourself to protect someone who doesn't care. For the first time, I admitted it. I wasn't just unhappy. I wasn't just tired. I was breaking. I felt a strange calmness wash over me, the kind that comes right before a storm. I hugged myself and said in a shaking voice, "If I stay here, I will lose myself completely." And that was the moment I realized. I had reached my breaking point. something had to change. Or I would disappear inside this toxic marriage. The morning after my breakdown felt strangely quiet. I woke up with swollen eyes and a heavy headache, but my heart felt different, still hurting, but aware. Aware that if I didn't save myself now, no one ever would. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the window where the first light of the day was coming in. That soft light felt kinder than anything I had felt in months. Rael was still asleep. His face looked peaceful, so different from the person who had been tearing me apart for so long. I looked at him for a moment and thought, how did love bring me here? And then, without planning it, without thinking deeply, my heart whispered. Leave, today. My hands trembled as I opened the cupboard and took out a small bag. I folded only a few clothes, the ones I truly needed. Every sound felt loud, like the zip of the bag, the click of the drawer, even my own breathing. I kept looking toward the door, afraid he would wake up. Afraid he would stop me. Afraid of myself, of changing my life in one painful step. Then, suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mira, my cousin. Just 4 simple words. Are you okay, Echelon? I stared at that message. And I broke again, but this time, it wasn't weakness. It was relief. Someone cared. Someone saw me. Someone was waiting for me to reach out. I typed back with shaking fingers. Please. I need help. She replied within seconds. I'm coming. Don't be scared. And just like that, a small door of hope opened inside me. I quietly picked up my bag and slipped out of the bedroom. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would burst. When I reached the living room, a memory flashed, the nights I waited for him on this couch, the times he yelled at me right here, the tears I wiped off this very floor. I touched the doorknob and closed my eyes for a moment. Please, I whispered to myself, be strong this time. When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face. It felt sharp but freeing. Mira was already waiting in her car downstairs. When she saw me holding a bag, her eyes softened and she opened her arms. I walked into her warm hug and felt years of pain melt into her shoulder. You're safe now, she whispered. For the first time in so long, I believed those words. As we drove away, I looked back at the building, the place where I lost pieces of myself for years. But instead of pain, this time I felt something else. I felt myself returning. Slowly. Quietly. But truly. I didn't know what my future would look like. I didn't know how long healing would take. But I knew one thing for sure. I had finally walked away. The first few days away from Rael were strange. The apartment felt empty without him, but instead of suffocating me, the quiet gave me space to breathe for the first time in years. Mira stayed with me, helping me unpack my small bag, making tea, listening to me without judgment. It felt like someone finally understood how heavy my heart had been, how quietly it had been breaking. I found a small job nearby, something simple to get me moving again. Even the little things, answering calls, meeting colleagues, walking to work on crowded streets, felt like tiny victories. Every smile from a stranger, every friendly hello, reminded me that life had colors I had forgotten. Slowly, I realized the city that once felt cold and cruel now held possibilities. It wasn't Rael or anyone else controlling my life anymore. I controlled it. One evening, Mira handed me a card. Aaron, she said. Call this therapist. You need someone to help you heal. At first, I hesitated. Talking to someone about my marriage felt like admitting defeat. But then I remembered the panic attacks, the nights I cried alone, the times I had swallowed pain until it poisoned me. Maybe this was not defeat, maybe it was survival. Meeting Aaron was unlike anything I had expected. She listened without interrupting, without judging, without telling me what to do. She helped me name the pain I had endured, gaslighting, emotional abuse, neglect. She helped me see that what happened was not my fault. I began journaling my feelings again, but this time with honesty, with courage. I wrote about my fears, my anger, my sorrow, and also my first tiny sparks of hope. Days turned into weeks. Every morning, I practiced telling myself, I matter. I am allowed to feel. I deserve peace. It felt strange at first, even unnatural, but eventually, it sank in. I started reconnecting with old friends who had drifted away because Rail never wanted me to socialize. I laughed again, cautiously at first, but then freely. My voice returned, my confidence returned, and with it, a sense of self I hadn't felt in years. The city was no longer a prison. It became a canvas where I could paint a life of my own choosing. And with every small step, a new skill, a friendly conversation, a quiet moment alone, I felt lighter. I was beginning to see the woman I had lost. Piece by piece, I was putting her back together. And for the first time, I realized, healing wasn't just about leaving him. Healing was about finding myself again. It took months to feel whole again. Months to trust myself, to trust life, to believe that I was allowed to be happy. But step by step, I did. Every morning I woke up, I reminded myself, I am not my past. I am not what he did to me. I am stronger than my fear. And slowly, those words became true. I started a small business, something I had always dreamed of but never dared to try. It wasn't easy. Some days, I wanted to give up. But each time I worked through the fear, I felt a spark of pride. The city that once felt suffocating now felt alive, full of opportunities. I was alive. Truly alive, for the first time in years. Rail tried to contact me a few times, sending messages, calling, even appearing at my workplace. But I didn't respond. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because I had finally realized that I didn't need him to complete me. I had spent years bending, shrinking, and losing myself to someone who never cared. Now, I was building myself anew, brick by brick, word by word, heartbeat by heartbeat. I also reconnected with friends I had neglected, neighbors who had quietly supported me, and even Samir, who had reminded me once that I mattered. I laughed without fear of judgment, I cried without guilt, and I made choices that were mine alone. And with each decision, I felt stronger, freer, and lighter. One day, as I walked through the city streets, I realized something. I was no longer the girl who had entered this marriage with hope and left with heartbreak. I was Echelon, the woman who survived, who healed, who refused to let pain define her life. And for the first time, I smiled not because someone else made me smile, but because I had found my own reason to. Sometimes I think about the past. Sometimes I feel the sting of betrayal, the weight of the years I wasted. But I no longer feel trapped by them. I only feel grateful that I found the courage to leave, to fight, and to reclaim myself. And that is the lesson I want to leave with anyone listening. Sometimes leaving is the bravest form of love, the love you give to yourself. Because no one can break you unless you allow them to. And no one can define your worth except you. I am free. I am whole. I am me. And that is enough. If this story inspired you, please like and subscribe. Your support means everything.